Why do I always look lopsided in these things? Is it the camera? Is it me? Is it my jacket? Is it where I live? Am I actually lopsided? These are the mysteries that go through my mind at 8 o'clock in the morning. Because it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Good morning and welcome. It is December 1st, the first day of Vlogmas, the first day of Jingle Jam, the first day of the 30 days of D&D, then the first day of my epic quest to reach 1,000 subs. And it's D&D Day 1 / Vlogmas Day 1 / Christmas Week Day 1 / December Day 1. And it's about 8 o'clock in the morning and it is raining here at Site B. And we're doing the 30 days of D&D. But guess what? Before we start that, the brand new playtest for round 3 of 1 D&D is live. And it's clerics and species. Because once again, Wizards of the Coast has decided the term race is bad. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that a lot. But first, 1 D&D, you're going to have to take a second to take a break because we're going to do 30 days of D&D like we do pretty much every year around this time as Vlogmas Day 1. How did I get started playing D&D? I think you've all heard this story. If you haven't heard this story, it's sort of a weird roundabout way how I got started playing. But if you have heard this story, please feel free to just skip forward to the end where I blatantly, shamelessly try and get you to buy my merch. All right, so how I got played D&D. Now, obviously, D&D was kind of already circulating in the nerd sphere, so I'd already heard of it. I was at the Glendale Galleria in Glendale, California, on the second floor, right as you get out of the parking lot and enter into the Galleria. I remember it clearly. It was on the right-hand side was a little teeny store, maybe 10 by 10, that just had 3 walls of shelves and a little register and maybe a back room. And it was all those little pewter figures. Those pewter dragons, the pewter pixies, the pewter fairies, the little Lord of the Rings pewter figures, all those little pewter fantasy figures that are around that time in the late 70s, early 80s. And amongst them were the very first beginning D&D figures. And a lot of them were just like, miniature figures from pre-existing miniature war games, the Lord of the Rings figures, a little pewter dragon, stuff like that. And the guy had all these little things. And I was just fascinated by them. Like, I completely just, what are these things? I mean, obviously, I already love toys, and I love fantasy, and I loved, just little tchotchkes, and I just loved the little world of this, these figures. And I recognized the Lord of the Rings figures, and I recognized the dragons and the fairies. And then he also had some stuff from some military miniature games, and then like little tanks and stuff like that from the pre-existing ones. And then he had like the very first beginning ones of what would eventually becomes the D&D led and pewter figures. And I asked him, where were these from? And he said, D&D. And he said it was from a game called D&D. And I just like, wham. So the next time we went to the Glendale Galleria, the first thing I did was into that store and just got lost in this little world of these little figures for like an hour. So of course, being a kid, 7, 8 years old, I asked Santa to bring me D&D. And on Christmas, sure enough, Santa brought me the original white box with Men, Myth, and Magic, Adventures and the Blackmore and that stuff. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is great. I tried to read through it. Of course, I was dyslexic and really couldn't sort of read this then. I tried making characters. I tried playing it every time I was out, anywhere. I tried to get my family members to buy me more stuff. My brother and I tried to play it, but we're 7, 8 years old, trying to make sense of these rules and then the red box came out. And so like the first 2 years I was playing D&D, I wasn't really playing D&D. We were just sort of making shit up between me and my brother, and there were 1 or 2 other kids I could find at my age who were sort of playing it. So my introduction to role playing in D&D didn't actually really start with D&D. When we moved from where we lived to Studio City, I met another kid and a couple other kids who also sort of played D&D. Same thing. So we're sort of learning the rules together and trying to figure out how this thing works and trying to figure out how to design dungeons. And of course, we were going from white box to red box and from red box to first edition and just all the rapid changes through the, at the late 70s, early 80s of D&D evolution. But then this game came out called Villains and Vigilantes. And if you are a complete and utter stranger to my site, you may not understand my love for all superhero role-playing games, especially Marvel superheroes and villains and vigilantes. So the second we discovered villains and vigilantes, D&D kind of went to the side. Every time we got together, pretty much we wanted to play superhero role-playing games. So like for most of the 80s, I was playing superhero role-playing games. I wasn't really playing a lot of D&D. We'd occasionally bust out D&D. I played some T&D with Tom Lindgreen and those guys in the Studio City section. We ran a couple D&D tournaments. But for the most part of the 80s, I played Villains and Vigilantes. And when I went to college, I joined the local game club, the Fantasy Gamers Guild. But again, nobody up there was really playing D&D. They were playing a lot of homebrew games. They were playing this time travel game that Matt Keating invented called Aftermath. Tepanot. They were playing Aftermath, run by Richard LeDuc. They were playing Champions. So again, throughout my entire college, pretty much nobody was playing D&D. We started a D&D game, but then we switched it to GURPS when GURPS came out, and then we're playing a lot of Villains and Vigilantes, including Barry Oster's infamously awesome Heldenchrist Villains and Vigilantes campaign. So for my 4 college years, I only played like one game of D&D, which then was converted to GURPS Fantasy, and then I came back to LA, and now it's I went to school at 1984, 1985, yeah. So it's about 1989, 1990. I've returned to Studio City, the Southern California Valley, to begin my career in film, which meant going to work at a video store, because if you grew up in Studio City in the 80s/90s and you had a degree in theater, you went to work at a video store. And then that's when D&D really exploded for me. For like the next 15 years, from 1990 to 2002, all we played every week was TJ Storm's Company of the Bull D&D campaign. And then in 2002, I moved from Studio City to here at Site A, which may or may not be in Ventura, California, or on a small island off the coast of Costa Rica, depending upon which story you prefer to believe. And when I moved up here, it was pretty much, again, mostly D&D until Pathfinder. Some GURPS, some other games. I tried to get superhero games started, but nobody really wanted to play superheroes. So we played D&D, we ran D&D, and that brings us up to today. Pathfinder, 4th edition, 3rd edition, 3.5, 5th edition. So yeah, it was, my D&D life was starting with the figures, getting into the game, trying to learn the game, giving the game up for almost 10 years to play Villains and Vigilantes and other superhero role-playing games, going to school in Northern California and never playing D&D other than one time, playing Cyberpunk, Vampire, GURPS, and a lot of Villains and Vigilantes, coming back to the Valley, and then just pretty much playing D&D nonstop in some form or another till now. So that's how I got started. How did you get started playing this strange hobby? Did you get started playing D&D? Did you get started playing another one? I know there's a lot of people who got started playing GURPS and Vampire and Palladium Rifts. I know a huge group of people who got into the game from Rifts and never ever played D&D. And then, of course, if you're from any other country other than here in the United States or Costa Rica, depending upon where you think I live, you got started playing either Warhammer or Call of Cthulhu, and probably there's some of you out there who have never played D&D. So, how did you get started? Let me know. That's how I got started. God, I'm a mess. I need to shave or something, or get a haircut, or, I don't know, replace my face with a bionic face. Yeah. So that's how I got started. How do you get started? Let me know down below. And now, if you skipped all that to the end, here's my blatant, shamelessly self-promoting, buy my merch. It's Christmas. What you need to get every member of your family for Christmas is OGGM merch. Links down below. I have my exclusive stickers site up on Redbubble. I've got my t-shirts up on Teamspring. I've got all my printed projects so far exclusively on Big Geek Emporium till the end of the year. And I am a Fantasy Grounds affiliate. So if you're thinking of getting into a virtual tabletop, you could do worse than Fantasy Grounds. I have played it myself. It is a great VTT. especially for someone like me who has a lot of trouble with VTTs and computers. So yeah, it's one of the best that I've found that I've actually played on. I would rate it in the top 3 of the ones I've actually had a chance to mess around with since I started using VTTs over the past 2 years. So yeah, I'm a Fantasy Ground affiliate. Use my Fantasy Ground affiliate. If you want to get a VTT, you get a percentage off, and of course I get like 1% of the sale, which amounts to like nothing. But still, it's something awesome to talk about, and it's a great thing to get everybody who's a gamer in your life. Is the OGGM merch. Links down below. I will talk to you later because I know we're gonna spend the next couple days talking about the new round of 1D&D playtest and what it means or not means and how people are going to misinterpret it. And oh god, the pain. I don't know, maybe there'll be something good in it. See ya!